In the beginning, darkness was on the face of the earth. And God said, "Let there be light." And God created creatures of every kind. But humanity has exploited his creation in the name of the almighty dollar. Until today, thousands of species are on the brink of extinction. But there are those who are acting to save endangered species before it's too late.
The future for the bears is looking better, actually, than it was a few years ago.
Effective conservation could allow Cambodia to boast one of the largest and most important sun bear populations in the world.
We travel around the whole country trying to disrupt and combat the wildlife trade.
Well, I love all wildlife, particularly tigers, and I'm particularly unhappy to see this decimation. Without tigers, an infinitely lesser world, I think. I think we'd all agree.
If plans for conservation areas and wildlife parks is actually put into action, then Cambodia is probably going to be one of the best places for wild elephants in Asia.
I think a lot can be done in Southeast Asia, and I do think that wildlife populations can be effectively protected at sustainable levels and even be on the increase.
A traditional Khmer dance. So old it's recorded in stone on the walls of the famous Angkor Wat, a former ancient capital of this amazing country. The dance is about a group of maidens who find paradise in nature. Nature, though, is a priority for international agencies here, but not for most Khmer people in their struggle to survive after 30 years of bloody civil war. Alongside the UN-led economic and political reconstruction, wildlife groups have flocked here since the late 1990s, promoting the notion of animal welfare. An alien concept to most of Cambodia's impoverished 13 million people, who in their attempt to survive are often more interested in eating animals than conserving them. This region has always been rich in wildlife. Bears, tigers, leopards and many more species used to range across the whole of Southeast Asia. But the loss of habitat, hunting and the spread of humanity is quickly driving them closer to extinction, and Cambodia is no exception. In a country where the average annual income is equivalent to just $280 US, the stakes for the poachers and smugglers are high indeed. The animal trade, with all its risks, is attractive. And Steve Galster, who works for conservation agency Wild Aid, says it's driving many species to extinction.
The illegal wildlife trade is probably the #1 threat to endangered rare animals today across the world, we think. Globally, the trade is estimated between about $8 and $12 billion a year.
But stopping the trade is not the only reason that's brought the wildlife conservation organisations flocking to Cambodia. It's this, the jungle. Pristine habitat that Cambodia still has and which its neighbours and many developed nations have long since destroyed. In this kind of virgin forest, animals can live and flourish. That's why so many conservation groups now put money into people as well as animals. Forest rangers, a growing force supported by non-government agencies, NGOs such as Australia's Free the Bears Fund and America's Wild Aid and many more. Free the Bears' Dave Ware says this support is crucial.
Most of the rangers that are from the Ministry of Environment, there's very little funding comes from central government. So there's about enough for the guys to have a uniform once every 18 months, sit around their substations, if they have a substation, and do very little patrolling. So our idea was to get the rangers into the forest, doing long distance patrolling, to find out where the violations are, collect data on the wildlife there, and what's going on inside the forest.
Cambodia banned the export of forest timbers in 2001, but stopping the illegal loggers is not so easy. Likewise, all wildlife is protected in Cambodia, but with big bucks to be made, organised crime runs poaching gangs. And with vast areas of forest to patrol with limited resources, it's a continual battle against the odds. This is one species that's at the centre of the conservation battle. The Malayan sun bear. The sun bears were endemic to most of Southeast Asia until comparatively recently. The world's smallest bear, standing just over a metre on its hind legs, its natural habitat is the forest, where it spends as much time high in the treetops as it does on the ground, using its large paws to climb or to forage. But its paws have other uses. They are a restaurant delicacy, usually chopped off when the animal is still alive. Its close cousin, the Asiatic Black Bear, has a similar use for humanity. It is particularly favoured for its gallbladder. The bile, or the whole organ, is sold for traditional Chinese medicine. And the most majestic of beasts, the tiger, now almost extinct in the wild in Cambodia, his bones alone fetch $200 US a kilo. The few remaining wild tigers still in danger from the desperate poachers. And yet hope remains because of the massive international effort to pressure and support the Cambodian government in its conservation program. Joe Woolston is the Cambodian head of the American-based Wildlife Conservation Society.
I think Cambodia has shown significant will towards protecting populations of all these species. If we can manage to conserve a network of sites across the country that together represent the species, the natural species complex of Cambodia, the natural habitats of Cambodia, and we can support that network, strengthen it, then I think we would have done something that actually many countries in Asia have not yet achieved. And I think Cambodia has every chance of achieving that.
Sunday at the Phnom Tomeo Zoo and Animal Rescue Centre outside Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia. Families arrive to enjoy a day out, just like any other outing in countries across the world. But the destination for the trip is not like many others. This zoo and rescue centre could be the key to the survival of whole species. Rescued bears and tigers come here to join a large range of other rare and endangered species. It's a place of hope where before there was none. And some Khmer people are now part of that hope.
I think it's very important to protect all animals living in the forest.
She don't want to sell animal and she want to keep animal here for the people come to visit here.
Phnom Tomeo is part of the global campaign to save the sun bear. 10 years ago, such places didn't exist, and these Khmer families were more likely to be eating the bears rather than enjoying them as part of nature. The fact that they come here at all bears witness to change and the possibility of conserving this country's wildlife. There are 29 sun bears, 7 black bears and 7 tigers here now. All of them confiscated from poachers or private citizens keeping them illegally, and the population continues to grow. Mary Hudden is an Australian. Less than 10 years ago, she knew little about conservation and nothing about sun bears. Now her charity, Free the Bears, provides this rescue facility and has operations in 4 other countries.
It was back in '93. I just saw a little bit on the news about the bear farms in China where they were taking the bile from the bear's gallbladder. And it was completely new to me. I'd never even heard about bear farming or taking the bile. I just thought bears were free in the forest. And I started a petition which ran for 2 years, which we presented to the Prime Minister of China, and we started to get well known about our campaigning for these bears. And then early in '97, we heard about some bears in Cambodia, but in the meantime we'd become a fund. We've launched a fund in '95, and it sort of went from there.
Sun bears are wonderfully adapted to the forest. They have enormous claws, much longer than most bears. Just the thing if you want to tear bark from trees to find the tasty grubs beneath. the soles of their paws, like ours, are hairless, allowing for good grip, again essential in the trees. They have a superbly sensitive nose that can sniff out a morsel of food almost anywhere. Because sun bears, like most of their larger cousins, are not hunters, they forage for food, spending most of their time searching the forest floor or the trees for anything from fruit and leaves to small animals if the chance arises. And they are exceptional climbers. Each of the bears is a character with a story of life before the rescue centre. But most are horror stories.
Ramdor was taken out of somebody wearing a backpack. She was taken out of a little basket on the back, and she was going across the borders into Vietnam, either for the restaurant trade or bile, for the bile farms. And she was confiscated by the Wildlife Protection Office and brought to the zoo. And some special sun bear milk actually was sent from Australia. It was made up specially for her, as she was quite a baby, probably about 2 to 3 months old. And she did very well on that. She was fed by a bottle until she was about 4 months.
Another rescued bear, this time a so-called pet. Emaciated and scared, this little bear was confiscated from a normal family home. The owners indifferent to its starvation and suffering. Is immediately named Mokyup by the Khmer keepers, which means ugly face. Certainly a face which at this moment not even his mother would love.
So, you're all right with him in there? I mean, you can hang on to the crate, and we need to go back to the crate, easy enough, back to food in.
But a few months of care, and ugly face will be as strong as this cub, Bopper. He's probably much younger than Mokyup, but already at just over a year, his powerful claws and teeth can make short work of a coconut or anything else. A more difficult case is Oral, a sun bear trapped in a snare in the wild. His paw was so badly damaged it had to be amputated. For months he's been here at the rescue centre. He won't be returned to the wild. The hope is that he'll be sent to a zoo in Australia. Melanie Lloyd is an experienced animal keeper from Exmouth in England. She's a volunteer working with Free the Bears.
Because he's a wild bear and a mature adult male, it's very difficult. I've spent hours and hours with him, and he goes through fits and fads. Sometimes he's good, but anything will freak him out. Sudden movements. His foot has healed almost completely, which is really good. Since then, he's had a double root canine job done as well. But yeah, he's good. He takes food from me and some of the other keepers, but there's still a long way to go.
Sun bears are extremely agile. By contrast, their black bear cousins are considerably less athletic. The black bear is much more of a ground dweller than the sun bear, although it's still a remarkable climber when there's food to be had. Its shorter claws and heavier bulk make the athletic feats of the little sun bear impossible. And because they are larger and apparently stronger, they are more favoured by poachers and bile farmers, to the degree that they are now seriously endangered. The trouble is, reliable research is scarce, so no one really knows just how many are left.
The level of research hasn't been great. Many people report it as quite common in some areas, but that's based upon very little evidence. Certainly its range is more limited than sun bear, and within that, records have been few and far between. We still only have 2 camera trap records, as opposed to WCS has recorded over 35 of sun bear.
Dishes of bear bile, destined for the traditional Chinese medicine trade, the product of a merciless disregard for animal suffering. These images were filmed by the Worldwide Society for the Protection of Animals in Vietnam, where bear farming is still legal. These bears are milked for their bile until their gallbladders collapse. Then they are killed and their parts are sold off. Their life expectancy is months rather than years. This footage was shot secretly for 2 reasons. This is big business in Asia and people's lives are at risk, and because governments know full well the outcry that follows the screening of such pictures. In Cambodia, the black bears remain protected. It means you shouldn't see this kind of thing, but it still goes on, albeit in secret and illegally on a smaller scale.
Once we've given the search warrant, Nick and Nim T.
Meet the combined Wild Aid and Government Wildlife Protection Office Enforcement Unit, a kind of wildlife SWAT squad. A private home in the north of Cambodia. It's about to be raided by police and wildlife officers. They've been told that 2 black bears are being kept here for bile farming. The squad moves in, protected by police. Violence is always a possibility here, and poachers are normally well armed. The comfortless cage of the trader. 2 bears are indeed here, but it seems they are different to the ones that were the subject of the tip-off. Brian Kennelly works with Wild Aid to coordinate the mobile enforcement squad.
The guys just told me that the 2 bears here are different from the last time I visited about 3 months ago, which sort of corroborates the reports we've had that the owner deals with gallbladders and bile. Unfortunately, the other 2 bears probably already dead. The gallbladders and the bile probably already been sold, along with the skin, the meat, bones, and nothing goes to waste.
The bears are sedated before being moved. Too late for some, but not for these 2. Soon they'll join others at Mary Hutton's Phnom Tomeo Rescue Centre, where they will be treated with tender loving care and have a bright future ahead of them. But that won't mean a return to the forest. Most rescued bears have been dependent on humans for food for most of their lives, and they would quickly die or be killed if left to their own devices.
growing since yesterday.
At the rescue centre, life is relatively easy. Health, food and conditions are all monitored and managed. Nutrition is carefully planned, and their diet is probably better than much of the human population of this country. Computer models ensure the correct mix of minerals and protein for each bear. It might not be bush food, but if you're a hungry little bear, this is just what the doctor ordered. Part of their rehabilitation is to encourage them to act naturally, to emulate normal forest behaviour. So food is also hidden around the enclosure to encourage foraging. It also draws them out and keeps them active and occupied. When you get close to these sun bears, it's easy to see why people around the world think them cute. Undeniably attracted to watch as they play and experiment in the safety of the rescue centre. Their teddy bear looks is part of the reason why so many are torn from their mothers in the jungle as cubs and caged in homes across the continent. Wildlife trading is another.
A major part of that trade is here in Asia, because there's a lot of species that are sought commercially around the world are found here, whether it's rare cats or turtles, snakes, even rare animals and plants. Also because part of the market, a big part of the market for those same things is found here in Asia. So it's a constant trade. Like anything else, like drugs or anything, the commodity, so to speak, goes to the rich country where the demand is, and the trade moves through areas where law enforcement is weak. So we're here in Cambodia, you've got rich wildlife resources. You're next to Vietnam, which can move the wildlife into the #1 consuming country in the region, which is China. So there's a lot of pressure here in Cambodia. You have to look at it in that, in sort of the economic way to understand what's going on. There was a tip-off about a trader outside of Bangkok who owned a virtual slaughterhouse. This guy was pretty typical of some other wildlife traders in the region. What he did was he put out a call for the various species that he wanted to sell to local restaurants and then to sell outside the country. What you have in Thailand is a lot of Asian tourists. And part of their holiday, whether they go to the beach or the casino or whatever, is also to stop off to an illegal restaurant off the back road and eat bear paw or other things that they couldn't get back home or they certainly couldn't afford.
These animals were rescued by Wild Aid from the illegal restaurant trade which thrives in Thailand. Thankfully, the restaurant trade in Cambodia is dying out. Government-backed radio campaigns and huge billboards have resulted in the virtual disappearance of bear from Phnom Penh menus. So, this is a story of success as well as destruction, of hope as well as despair. The Khmer people have lived in Cambodia for millennia. Their society stretches back to when the Egyptian civilization was flourishing in the West. But the flowering of their culture came in the Angkor period. For 600 years they blossomed, from 800 AD to just 600 years ago. During that time, the famous Angkor Wat and scores of other temples were built as the capital of their nation. Angkor Wat Temple is large, but the whole complex covers an enormous 77 square miles, a colossal monument to power and belief. But sadly, there is a more recent reason why the world remembers Cambodia. The killing fields, the slaughterhouse of Pol Pot and his followers. This is Tul Sleng, Pol Pot's infamous interrogation centre in Phnom Penh. Thousands screamed for mercy from the torturers here, but found none. Ironically, it was a school before its teachers were murdered and its classrooms given over to the demons of pain and terror. But this map is not from a geography lesson. It's the blueprint for tearing a nation apart and shifting whole populations from the comfort of their homes to forced labour in the countryside. Pictures of the slain. Pol Pot's people photographed every victim, before or after death. Some survived the torture, only to end their lives here at Chiang Ek, better known to the rest of the world as the killing fields. Here, in 1980, nearly 9,000 bodies were unearthed from these mass graves. The graves remain empty now and somehow out of place, as chickens scratch and peck and children reach out for a tourist dollar, oblivious to the horror of the place. In other such memorials in other parts of the world, only the implements of death are evident. Here, though, the victims themselves remain, their skulls stacked 15 levels high in a memorial, catalogued only by age. And all this within the lifetime of most Cambodians. If a people can inflict such destruction on their own, how difficult is it to convince them that animals are worth conserving? Violent death is commonplace here. Political assassination and murder are regular occurrences. The law is a flexible feast and applied or not according to the influence of the offender. And that applies as much to wildlife poaching and trading as it does to human violation. This hotel near the famous Angkor Wat temple keeps 2 sun bears. It's illegal to own protected animals. Government officials know about them, but the owner has enough influence to avoid confiscation and prosecution. The hotel's marketing manager tells us the bears are gone. Tourists, he says, don't like to see bears in cages, so they got rid of them. But in reality, the bears are still there, now in the staff quarters, evident from the street through the open gates. The staff happy to show them off. The 2 bears are in good condition, their cage better than the local zoo, but still kept illegally. Often such bears are taken as cubs from their mothers in the forest. The mothers are mercilessly killed. The effects are lasting. Even this mature bear still sucks its paw like a human baby sucking its thumb, a legacy of the pain of not being properly weaned.
Some animals would go across to Vietnam or to Thailand, but a lot get sold within Cambodia, and they're usually kept as a prestige pet. It's usually people with a little bit of money that keep them. They just keep them on show. But for every bear that comes out of the forest, one dies in the forest, and some of the ones that come out of the forest don't survive to get to the market to be sold.
But these bears are lucky, in a way. The trade in pieces of bear and other animals is profitable for the poachers. At the Wild Aid headquarters, hundreds of confiscated animal parts are just a small part of the plunder. The chance to take a bear, a tiger, a gibbon from the forest and make 6 months' income or more in a single day is often just too tempting. The skin of a sun bear, brittle and uncured, worthless. A black bear pelt as dry as parchment, the remains of its claws still attached. A leopard skin. Turtle shells by the score. Banteng skulls. This handsome grazer's horns prized as ornaments. They are just a small part of the 16,000 live animals and thousands more animal parts confiscated by conservation organisation Wild Aid in just 2 years. Suwana Guntlet, head of Wild Aid in Cambodia, makes no apology for getting tough on poachers.
Well, we're approaching it through direct protection, and that's why it works so well. Direct support to rangers in the parks by training them, equipping them, and supporting their patrol food, for example. Supporting brigades that go in restaurants, in towns, on the roads, on borders, to confiscate shipments of wildlife going abroad. And thirdly, by changing the way people see animals and stopping wildlife consumption. It's very controversial, and I would say that that's one of the reasons why other NGOs and donors hesitate to engage in something that's not as people-friendly as a community-based project for alternative livelihoods, for example. They would rather do something that's very friendly than do something that's confrontational. But the result is there will be no more forest, there will be no more wildlife. There is no tomorrow for this. It has to be done today.
And that's why people like Nick Marks, a specialist in animal husbandry, are always ready to hit the road to rescue a bear or a tiger, or anything else that can be saved.
This is Orang. He was born here. His mother was a very nervous tigress and wouldn't look after him. So I had to go. Took him back to Phnom Penh and bottle raised him in my house. Oh, he's very sweet, very gentle. He's very sweet, quite rough, but he's very sweet. We're glad to have him. We'll probably keep him here for the rest of his life, unless we find a good, like a nice place with a mate, where he'd be well cared for. The alternative might be to find him a mate here, but you never know when things are going to turn up. He's very gentle with his bites on the whole. Well, we'd like to think he'll be all right. Of course, tiger can't survive without his natural habitat, without his prey, a good prey base, with massively increasing human populations, all infringing on forests where the tiger lives, all with their own needs, hunting, needing timber, and I guess the direct competition combined with the value of a tiger's body parts for traditional medicines has almost driven him to extinction. In fact, several subspecies as we know, are now extinct, and others are following. When you think of the hundreds of thousands of tigers there used to be, and the odd thousand, perhaps 3,000 in the world, wild, left today. Unless governments do have a radical rethink, then I think it probably is too late for the tiger. Conservation organisations and individuals in the tiger zone countries are working extremely hard to conserve habitat, conserve prey and conserve tigers. It needs huge efforts to actually make this successful.
A former rubber plantation inside a national park is being cleared for replanting. This time, the chainsaws are working legally. A plantation will provide badly needed jobs. But in spite of protection, the forest is still plundered on a large scale. Not far away, a massive hardwood tree has been felled and left to rot. The heart of the tree was eaten out by termites, so it had no commercial value. The illegal loggers just moved on to the next suitable example. Such action is putting continuous pressure on the tiger and the bear. Estimates for Cambodia vary, but it appears likely that no more than 100 of these awesome creatures remain in the wild. What's worse is they are scattered, making it difficult for them to breed and vulnerable to the poachers.
The negative side is that tiger have undergone a dramatic decline in Cambodia the last few years. The tiger has been hunted heavily in many areas by many different groups, both by outsiders, by locals, by military, by people coming in from other countries to hunt the tiger here. And in many areas, it no longer exists. It's extinct in many areas. However, there are small pockets where we continually confirm tiger presence. And these are generally areas where conservationists like WCS are putting a lot of their effort. The good news is that we have a large area of habitat in Cambodia. We have a reasonably, although depressed, prey base, which is essential for tiger. And we have an animal, the tiger, which is ecologically very plastic. It means it can deal in a number of different situations. This is a species that lives thousands of meters up in the Himalayas, down in the coastal forests of Bangladesh, and it can live in many different areas. It's very adaptable.
This is how researchers find out about animal populations. A camera trap. A simple motion-activated camera strapped to a tree. The trick is knowing where to put it. These guys have been doing it for years, but the story is not a good one. An occasional picture. Nothing like the frequency that a healthy forest would demonstrate. But still, the animals are there, unwitting stars in this human drama as conservationists persevere. But the Cambodian government is taking action to protect its wildlife and its forests. Since 1998, hundreds of thousands of hectares have been declared protected. That means no official logging, although plenty of illegal harvesting continues, often by local people unaware of the potential damage.
Everyone knows it's a very poor country and the government realises this too. So it wouldn't be particularly fair if you went straight up to a person in the forest that's been doing it for years, a bit of hunting and gathering or doing a bit of rice farming without really even knowing that it's a wildlife sanctuary, and then you just have to warn them this is a wildlife sanctuary and this is against the law, therefore you have to stop what you're doing and not come back into this area. And then they get to sign a government contract that gets registered with the headquarters of the national park, and then if they get caught again, then it's up to the directors of these areas to decide whether they want to prosecute or not.
We think conservation is not only for the Cambodia, but for the global interest. And we see that many species have discovered in Cambodia. Some already extinct species in other countries, but we could find in Cambodia, like the Sami crocodile.
Meet T. Sakun, head of forestry for Cambodia. It's his job to juggle the opposing interests in this, the wealthiest of the government's departments. Regional cooperation has been limited, but that's changing. Cambodia and Vietnam have now reached agreement to act against cross-border wildlife trafficking, a significant step forward in the battle against the poacher. Back at the rescue centre, the 2 black bears that were confiscated by the wildlife SWAT team are settling in. Now named Archie and Emily by Melanie Lloyd.
They need peace and quiet. So these 2 are in these cages here. Start by assessing their personality. I mean, just get them used to where they are. Get them used to moving about, pulling the slides out, shutting them, all the noises around, and then just spend as much time as we can with them, feeding them, hand feeding them, talking to them, giving them baths, giving them different treats that they probably wouldn't have had, like coconuts, bits of wood they can chew on, tyres they can play about on. And then, hopefully, we can mix these 2 bears and they can play with each other.
And Mokyup, Uglyface, the rescued pet, is also responding. Already interested in the world around him and on his way back to health. He'll be kept away from the other bears until he's strong enough to stick up for himself. Without the strength to defend himself, mixing with the other bears would be fatal. But it will come with time. Another species fighting to survive in Cambodia is the Asian elephant. Native to Cambodia as it is to much of Asia, but its numbers are dwindling in the wild and commercially less useful than it once was. This is the Angkor Elephant House. Designed and built by French architect Olivier Piot, he couldn't stand the thought of Angkor Wat being without its famous elephants, which it was only a few years ago. The elephant was the workhorse of this world for centuries, but now logging is mechanised and drastically reduced, and many of them are simply redundant. Too domestic to go back to the wild, useless to their owners. So they have come here to Angkor to join a growing herd of workers enjoying a gentle regime of tourist rides and retirement when the time comes. Gavin Boucher manages the centre.
This is Chi-He, and she's been here about 4 years, and Chi-He now is in her mid to late 30s, approximately. We're not sure how old she is, because unfortunately there's no records for her from when she was kept before she came here. The program here at the Company des Elephants to Angkor is basically set up to ensure, hopefully, that there will always be elephants at Angkor Wat. Elephants played a major role in the building of Angkor Wat, so it would seem a shame for there not to be any elephants here. So one of the reasons we have so many elephants here is we hope to breed them. And at the moment we actually have 3 pregnant. The poor Asian elephant has kind of been a little bit forgotten because it's not as dynamic or as large and impressive as its African cousin. So it's kind of been sort of forgotten by a lot of people. The problems facing the Asian elephant are probably a lot more serious than those facing the African elephant. That is habitat loss because of human encroachment through the need for land for farming. Poaching still goes on. And the problem of populations of elephants becoming fragmented in bits of forest that are left. So their chances of being able to breed and the genetic diversity of the species is being reduced.
So the same story for all the species. It's not surprising habitat preservation is the key. Like any of us, they need food and somewhere to live. If that should be the forest, then so much the better, of course. But it is the biggest challenge of all. So the hope is that habitat protection will work, that Cambodia will preserve its forests, and the animals for so long hunted for food and trade will return. Perhaps then, in the future, for these Khmer families, there may be somewhere other than a zoo to find their wildlife heritage. But it will require the continued pressure and money of the world's conservationists. It's a long shot, but here in this corner of Southeast Asia, there is a chance like no other to save a wild heritage before it's too late.